put Cam Coleman on Texas and simmed his career to see if he could win them a Natty. So the boys were the preseason #1, and after a tune-up game against Texas State, it was time to play the #2 team in the country, Ohio State. And after a very tough battle, UT would get their get back. But they still had one of the toughest schedules in college football in front of them, which made it very surprising that at the first college football playoff poll, they were the #4 team in the country, with 2 losses coming from Missouri and South Carolina. And Cam was not doing too hot with a little less than 500 yards and only 7 touchdowns. But in his defense, in this universe, Arch Manning went to the league, so he was catching passes from Darian Mensah, who was #4 in the Heisman race, so maybe that actually doesn't matter. But the Longhorns season was on the line with a huge matchup against #2 Alabama. So Cam really had to show up big and get open early, but by halftime, he only had 1 reception for 13 yards. His saving grace was the score was only 10-10, so there was still time for him to make a big impact on the game. But that would never come, and the boys would lose their 3rd game of the season, so they really needed a miracle to make it to the college football playoffs. And that miracle would come in the form of being ranked the #13 team in the country still and having a final game against #8 Tennessee. So it looked like the battle of the real UT was turning into a win and in game, and the Longhorns would give them the belt and punch their ticket with a little luck to the CFB. But the drama would continue because Texas not only would punch their ticket to the CFB, they would get a rematch against one of the 3 losses they had this year, where they would absolutely dominate and advance to the quarterfinals against Florida. And Cam took over, leading UT to a victory with 10 receptions, almost 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So it came down to Michigan, Texas Tech, Georgia, and us. But it really felt like if the boys could get it done against Georgia, the Natty was ours. So when the boys were down 17-10 at halftime and Cam only had 3 receptions for 30 yards, I was getting flashbacks to Alabama. But by the start of the 4th quarter, it was all tied up in anybody's game. Then Georgia would make it 27-24, putting all the pressure back on UT. And after a quick 3-and-out, there wasn't a single unclinched butt on the entire Texas side of the stadium. But to make matters even worse, Georgia would score on their very next drive, so Texas again needed a miracle. And just a couple plays later, it was none other than Cam Coleman shot out of a cannon for 60 yards and a 6-point score that would make it a 1-possession game. So it all came down to this: 2:17 on the clock and all 3 timeouts for the Longhorns, and they would get the stop. And Cam and the boys would trot back out on the field with 1:13 left and no timeouts. And with 50 seconds left, they'd make it to the Georgia 45, and really all they needed was a field goal. But a score would be even sweeter, but not as sweet as you hitting that subscribe button. And after a couple more plays, we'd get another 1st down, but with 30 seconds left on the clock, Darian Mensah dropped back to pass and threw it to a wide open Georgia Bulldog for a pick 6, ending our year, and Cam Coleman would get drafted in the 1st round.